Hey, everybody. Thank you for coming along today. So we have this is a session that we actually started trying to plan about 6 weeks ago or something, and then things kept coming up and things got pushed out and that. So it took us a while, but we finally got here. So today we have Margaret from AMO. I don't do you pronounce it AMO every time, or do you just go
We say AmO.
AMO? That's easier. From AMO in Lisbon in Portugal. We have Cuddle from Rascals in Dublin, Ireland, for those who don't know. And we will be joined by Taras from Octo in Cyprus, but he messaged me just a minute ago, so he's running a little bit late, so his apologies, but he should join us in a little while. So what we were planning on doing is just basically talking about what makes the typical things, like talking about the beers, the brewing, what makes the breweries kind of unique. So we have in both Rascals and AMO, there's a very strong taproom focus. It's very strong in what they do. It's all over their labeling, as we see. It's something that I think a lot of breweries don't. Well, a lot of breweries do have, but they don't focus it as much. So I thought it would be interesting to talk about that and just see where we go from there and see how it influences the beers and what they produce. So maybe a little bit of background first. Margaret, you're actually from Canada, I think.
Yeah, I'm from Canada. I grew up in Ontario, and then I lived for a number of years in Vancouver, and that's where I started really getting into beer and homebrewing. And then after I moved to Portugal, which is almost a decade ago now, I started homebrewing here, and the hobby grew into a small nano-brewery. So AmO, it's 5 years old now. Yeah.
And how big is the beer scene in Portugal?
It's still quite new here in Portugal. I'd say it's maybe around 10 years old or less in the Lisbon area, in the north of the country, around Porto and Coimbra. They had some craft breweries starting out a little bit earlier than that, but not much more than around 10 years. It's still really in the early stages. Other than this, there are two big national brands of lager, but that's the whole craft beer scene and getting different stuff. It's still really new.
Right, so you're pretty much a pioneer in the whole area.
Yeah.
And Carl, you started. You're around since 2014.
Yeah, so 7 years now. And similar story, I suppose. We started off home brewing. I was living in New Zealand at the time, and that's where I met my wife Emma. And I suppose the New Zealand beer scene at the time was far ahead of what there was in Ireland, because when I came home, I started looking for beers and wasn't really able to get what I was after. So I started home brewing and joined the homebrew club. But I suppose when we were moved back to New Zealand, we always had the idea of opening a brewery. And my plan originally was to try and build it together. I worked in engineering in previous life, and then Galway Bay, their first brewery came up for sale, and we put our heads together and looked at our numbers and see could we afford to buy the equipment. And it was a great decision because we just got the gear straight away. My plan originally was to spend months and months building something, but we were able to get their gear and got us going. So that was the first. So we're in a different location now. So the first brewery was 10 hectoliters or 1,000 liters. We're now in a new location in the city, close to the city centre, basically. Whereas the first brewery was on the outskirts of the city. It was just a warehouse in an industrial area. But where we are now is a 3,000 litre brewery, and as you said, a tap room, which is a big focus for us.
Yeah, no, the tap room's the interesting thing because, like I said, I mean, there's brew pubs, and I don't know, Margaret, what it's like in Lisbon or in Portugal generally, but I mean, in Ireland for breweries, I think Colin would say it's pretty difficult to get a tap room. It's not an automatic thing, you really have to fight for it.
Well, here it's like I said, craft beer is still very, very new here, so I think it's a bit like the country might not have a lot of legislation already set up around it. So our brewery, as I said, where things are a bit slow maybe in Portugal, and it's also the land of, it's a very small country. It's a land of a lot of tiny things. So our brewery is only 200 liters, 2 hectoliters, and our tap room can fit about 10 people inside, but you can get a good crowd outside on the patio.
All right, so
and,
the inside is quite small, but the patio, is that out onto the street? Is it part of? Is
yeah,
it fenced
on the
off?
sidewalk.
It's just on the street, so you can just go. People can come in and drink on the street, and that there's no there's no one moving them on or anything like that.
Well, we have the license set up for the furniture, like to
right.
use the space.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I think maybe also being as small as we are, it's basically like a sort of bar license with its own production, because it's not nearly big enough to be considered an industrial project.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds really cool. Like I've seen breweries like that before, and basically everything you're producing is sold there on site.
Well, in our case, I mean, even though it's a small amount of beer, we're also only open a few days a week. We've moved up to 4 days a week, but it used to be just once or twice a week. And a lot of our clients are also really little places like cafes and restaurants, and they only buy a couple kegs or a couple cases of beer a week just as part of their larger menu.
Yeah.
So we managed to get out to some other spots around Lisbon to sell our beer there.
And is it mostly bottle, or are you getting kegs as well?
Yeah, we do both, yeah. Bottles and soda kegs.
Yeah, it's cool that the other, I suppose, the other, like saying, smaller cafes and stuff are buying like a local beer, local product.
Yeah, it's getting a really popular alternative. People want all these new and different things.
I guess it's, I think I asked Daniel this a couple of weeks ago, but I mean, Portugal would normally be wine country.
For sure. It still very much is, yeah.
Yeah, would it be, I would have thought that made it harder, but someone mentioned, I think it was Novarunda last week, mentioned that in a way, wine country makes it easier because you're just kind of trying to convert people to try beer rather than trying to persuade them, to try specific types of beer or something. Like the taste, or just try a beer, and if you can get them that stage, it's easier in the end. I don't know if that makes sense or anything, but do you find it easy? Like, do you find it easy for people to go and try beer, or do they still just mainly want wine? Or once they try a beer, will it be more
for sure. I mean, drinking beer doesn't stop you also from drinking wine in other situations. And the Portuguese culture, the very wine culture, so you always have table wine. It's very common to have some wine with your meal at lunch or dinner. It's no big deal. It's sort of the drink of the people. It's not exclusive. In fact, craft beer, maybe one of the bigger challenges is the price difference compared with the national brands of lager that I mentioned, right? Craft beer is a lot more. So that's sort of the thing, getting people into it, and then they might be curious and want to try it, but they might think, okay, it's not worth it to go for that on a regular basis. But a lot of Portuguese people, like in the past, before the pandemic, when we had the beer festivals, there's always a huge turnout because people are really curious about this thing, which is still really new.
And are there many beer festivals?
We've got a few in Portugal. In Lisbon, there's a sort of Oktoberfest and a Lisbon Beer Week, but they were also both only maybe about 3 years old. I think one of the older ones was in Caminha and Ciaran. So as I said, in Coimbra and Porto, in the north and in the interior of the country up there, is where they're already more established. But we haven't really gotten out there much. We're basically tied to Lisbon so far.
We're in Lisbon. Is it right in the heart? Is it?
Yeah, we're really in the middle, in a residential neighborhood. Yeah, close to one of the central metro stations, like you can say, Marquês de Pombal. And so it's nice. We have just a lot of neighbors coming to the tap room, a lot of people who live nearby, but also tourists and visitors to the city who might be staying in hotels in the area. They just search for us and they find it.
Yeah, like I said, I went to Lisbon. I was only there one weekend, I think it was, or maybe it was a week. It was probably about 4 days, and that's the one time I've been there. But yeah, it was really nice in that you could wander around, and even the little restaurants, they tended to be little family-owned places. At least the part I was walking around, it was really different from say Dublin, where it's, you know, kind of taken over by big restaurants, by chains, by I think it still seemed to have real neighborhood feel in it.
For sure.
Yeah. I was actually in Lisbon just before the whole pandemic hit. With 0 cases in Ireland, and I remember there was 0 cases in Portugal, and we're like, so we went, and I think when we came back, we had our first case or something. But yeah, we were there for a long weekend, and yeah, it was a great city. Like as you said, loads of restaurants, cafes, bars, like really good food scene as well, I found.
Yeah.
Really good, really enjoyed it. So it was great. Like, and we found a few beers over there, which is great. So, and there are definitely craft bars. But I can see what you're saying. It is new, and it's kind of cool to see that. Like, you see something kind of. I'd love to go back again in a few years' time and see how's it evolved.
Yeah.
And it's also driven a lot by international people coming here. You know, tourists, but also expats who live here. So people who have already encountered craft beer or cerveja artesanal, as we say here, you know, elsewhere, right? And so they know what it is and they're looking for it.
Yeah, that's exactly what we were doing. You know?
Yeah, so you have the same. I mean, you've got it slightly different because you've a bigger premises, it seems like, but you also have more kind of national distribution, more organized national distribution.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, like as you say, we're a bit bigger. But like for the first basically 3 years, our beer was only available in keg. We didn't package beer at all, or maybe about 2 years, I guess. So we're quite lucky, you know. We're on the outskirts of Dublin. We're able to deliver the kegs into the craft beer bars, and you know, I think it was a good time. It was really catching on, craft beer, and the craft beer bars are busy. And if beer was pouring, they'd buy it off again the following week. So at that stage, we were brewing once or twice a week, and then I was doing deliveries on a Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday back in the brewery, kind of doing cleaning and stuff like that. But yeah, I suppose we grew, and we got some. We went to beer festivals, and we did well at those, and there was. So myself and my wife my wife Emma started the business, and we have 2 more people involved in the business now, and they just met us at a beer festival and liked what we were doing, and they actually own the building that the current brewery is in. So when we saw that building, we thought it was, first of all, it was big enough to do an expansion, but very important for us was that we had to have a tap room. It's always been the kind of dream that get people to the place and get them drinking the beer in the best condition that it can possibly be, because we found when we did start packaging, you know, depending on how the beer is kept, in going from the brewery to distribution and ending up on a shelf and down the country, you know, the quality of beer can degrade. So yeah, like having the tap room there is great, because they walk in, they can see the tanks, they can see where it's made, and they can get a pint of whatever they want in front of them.
Yeah, does that dictate? I suppose one of the questions is how much does that dictate what you're brewing? How much, like, are you focused on a core range, either be that, you know, everybody comes in and they want to have the same thing, or does it drive you to be brewing different types of beers every week? Or
for us, it's kind of both. For us, it's both. Like we have, I suppose, people that always come in and drink our Happy Days Pale Ale, or other people might always drink Jailbreak Lager. But we have a little 300-litre pilot kit as well, and that's solely for the tap room. So we have 13 taps. We have 5 that are always core, and then the other ones are always rotating. So we'll do a brew and might last a couple of months. We also get guest beers in from other Irish breweries.
And is that for you as well, Margaret? Like, does it, like, do the people who come into the tap room, are they looking for something different every time, or do they come in looking for the same thing? How does it decide what you do?
It's a bit of both as well. We have 7 taps, but due to complete lack of planning on my part, we have 9 beers in the core range, and then I'm just always juggling and trying to keep everything in stock. So there's always something different on tap, even if we're not coming up with new recipes. But I do like to always have one thing, like one single edition, just to have something different. And then for us, that's really important, because in the tap room, it's really just direct with the customers. They can get feedback and know what people think of it and what they like, and also how different types of customers respond to it, if they're brand new to AmO or are regular drinkers. And it's really good to have that interaction. But then again, I mean, we're still small enough that we have a close relationship with all the places where we do wholesale to. Unlike, I think, Cathal, obviously at your scale, as you're saying, you can't even control or have any idea of sometimes how things are being stored. And I mean, Ireland is a pretty big country as well, so.
Yeah, I suppose at the beginning, when we were just doing kegs only, but like I said, we had a direct relationship with the bars. Like, I was literally going in and meeting the barman and delivering the beer, having a chat, and then going to the next one. So I knew exactly what beer was pouring where. But yeah, when you go into cans at a bigger scale, yeah, it is more difficult. We do have our distributor do have cold storage, and we only recently started working with them, and it's made things a lot better. Like, I've gotten beer on the shelf, and I can check the date when it was packaged. I was like, right, that's only 3 or 4 weeks old, so it's good to see that. Like,
yeah, that's something. If Harris joins us later, I think he has a big thing down in Cyprus that the temperatures there are ridiculous. Yeah. He has to watch every single thing. That one of his worries is how to make sure that it's kept cold the whole way through and not kind of sitting on a shelf at 40 degrees for a week or two.
That's insane heat, yeah.
Yeah, which thankfully in Ireland we don't have that sort of temperature.
Yeah, so. Lisbon is pretty warm though, Margaret. Yeah, especially in summer.
Yeah, it is. I mean, in the summer we can get temperatures past 40 degrees Celsius.
Yeah,
it's normally hanging around 30. Yeah, so I guess that also influences a bit our beers, that basically everything is meant to be drank quite young. We only do put like 6 months of expiry on it, which is also quite easy to deal with, because it's a small production, so it's a high turnover. But the beers our recipes they're better fresh, right? So you just want it to get out there and move.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. Maybe we should try one just for the sake of it, just to see. But I was looking at the packaging of what you have. Like, nearly all of them, I think, were reasonably. They're not imperial stouts. They're not kind of ones that are designed to be high alcohol or to last forever. You have kind of lower. Like, I'm looking here at the Frutropolis, and I'm looking at, I think this is as well. Yeah, 4.8, and that's 4.3. So
yeah,
is that something that is driven by a tap room, or like people come in to have a session, have a few beers, that you focusing on that rather than trying to get people who want to have a big, strong imperial stout but will only drink one? Like, is that?
It's funny. For us, like our core beers are 4.1, 4.3. Just we have 5% IPA, and 6 is the strongest one. Yeah, that's the newer one. Yeah, that's 5. Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna give it a try.
All right, I actually drank that one last night, so I can't drink it now.
But yeah, we have put bigger beers on, or we've made double IPAs and stuff on the pilot kit, and bigger stouts out, and they do sell, but they sell at a much slower rate because, as you said, people are having one.
Yeah, so I just wonder, like, by having the tap room, you obviously have to increase your sales in the tap room as well, so it's kind of a balance out on that, is it?
Yeah. And I said, like, the core, like I said, we have 5 core taps, like they are the bigger sellers.
Really nice.
Yeah, we're pretty happy.
Hazy.
The hazy, that's our newest addition to the core range.
Smooth. Yeah, it is very smooth.
So lots of wheat, lots of oats. Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, I noticed that a lot of your recipes have wheat and oats in them.
Yeah. All the a lot of the pale ales and like that hazy one is, I would nearly say, too much wheat notes. It's quite difficult to brew it on the brew house. It gets very, very sticky. It makes a longer brew day, but like I think it's worth it in the end. You get a much smoother mouthfeel, and without adding too much sweetness. Like, I think with those kind of beers, when they're heavily hopped, you're trying to counterbalance with a bit of sweetness, but it can go too sweet as well and becomes cloying, you know. So you try and get the body in from the wheat and the oats, and it just makes it a richer beer, and it can hold and support all those hops.
Mm. Yeah, but it's definitely smooth and not too sweet, and the hops are really like soft and round in it in this. Yeah, to answer your question, Brian, our idea with having this somewhere around 5% ABV, it's my thinking is that since craft beers are still pretty new in Portugal and a lot of people might not have encountered very many before, it's sort of like entry level drinking. So that's why we're not really interested in going for anything extreme, you know, imperial, high ABV, really sour, really wacky ingredients.
Right.
I think there's a huge range of global styles out there that we can bring to Portugal, and expose people to, you know, our interpretations of those, and just get them into it, just get them started.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it to the other breweries to go for the like really creative recipes.
You do have a good range, though. Like, I think,
the range in that.
There's
a lot of. Sorry, Colin, but I would have thought like a lot of stuff that isn't mainstream, like that Scottish one. You know, there's there's a lot of what I thought wouldn't be mainstream anymore. Like hazy is probably everything, you know, and you're quite different on that.
Yeah. So the alcohol level of the beers and maybe the total flavor intensity, especially in certain things like bitterness, I try and keep it moderate. But I did want to make a range of recipes. So for example, the Scottish ale, it was just like, let's just try something like that. Let's bring in something, you know, that has like that little tiny smoky touch. Or the Raposinha, that one is a pale ale with coffee in it, with Arabica coffee. So it's a little bit fruity and a tiny touch of acidity in there from the coffee. And so it's like, it's not to say that we don't want to make interesting and creative beers as well, but not, let's say, not extreme ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes less is more when it comes to flavor and trying things. You know, you can blow people away with too much. Getting a hint in there. I'm really looking at the one there, the raspberry one, pink sunglasses. It's a cool name.
I also already drank your raspberry sour.
Oh yeah.
Red and berried. Yeah, actually, we did a little tasting with a couple of friends who were over of your raspberry sour and our pink sunglasses. And yeah, ours is definitely not a sour. It's just a sort of soft ale with raspberries in it, and yours it had, you know, that sour edge and a bit more color. But I thought they were both kind of nice expressions of raspberries.
Yeah, it's a great fruit to brew with. Raspberry, it's quite versatile. And we do brew a lot of fruit. Like you have the fruit chocolates there, Brian, in your hand.
Yeah.
So that's mango and passion fruit. So yeah, we do like just trying to get all those kind of juicy, fruity flavors into beers, and not just always rely on hops. You know, there are other adjuncts you can add into beer. How
do you normally use the fruit?
It's usually a puree that we add during fermentation. So maybe in day 2 or 3 fermentation, when it's basically peak fermentation, and we have a good source of they're sterile purees. So you get it's basically a bag in a box, and you open the bag and pour it in, and it works really, really well. Timing is crucial though, because like if you leave it too late during fermentation, the yeast isn't active enough, and it can cause sulfur, and you know, get a really kind of eggy aroma off your beer. So you need to go in a little bit earlier rather than later, I would say.
Okay, we put we worked a bunch now with raspberries and with mulberries, and putting them in after the active fermentation has passed.
Okay.
And we're using frozen fruit thawed in a mesh bag into the fermenter, sort of dry hopping with it.
Yeah.
For about a week, and then we take that out and package it. So make sure to have enough time that it can ferment down. And well, happily I didn't encounter any sulfur notes so far. I was a bit concerned the first time, you know, can I really just throw the fruit in there? And I thought, yeah, come on, let's just give it a go. How bad can it be? And then it turned out really well. The color isn't stable. You lose the bright red notes over time in this case. But since we have a lot of fresh fruit grown and available here in Portugal, that's why we thought, okay, let's try and work with that.
Yeah, that's good using the local stuff.
Yeah, but I would like to experiment a bit more and try some new things.
Have you ever tried like any kind of wild beers, like with fruit, or is it something you'd ever consider?
We haven't considered that so far. I mean, maybe, but I'm a bit conservative about the recipes. So.
Yeah. Sorry, my phone rang there. Yeah, it's almost like a different product in a way. The way some of those sour beers they're barrel aged, and you know it's a blending method and all that. Probably closer to wine than beer in a way.
Do you use a lot of grapes as fruit in your beer, or do you?
That's something that we have never tried, but there are other Portuguese craft breweries who are working on developing, you know, grape ale.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking actually, when Daniel from Sardine, he was saying that they do a lot with grapes, and that's why I occurred. And at the time, I think we had Luke. Yeah, it was funny actually because he was saying like we have so much grapes here and things, we just do grapes and everything. And Lucas was up in Poland, and he's saying I can't get grapes for love nor money. No matter what I offer to pay anybody, I want to brew with them, and I can't get them. So kind of mad that that difference, and you just. It's just different ingredients that you're used to, and that he was making the point that if you do anything in Portugal with grapes, you basically sell it straight away because people are familiar with the grapes, and that's the kind of the bridge in between the beer and the wine. So I thought that was interesting. So look, maybe we'll get onto Margaret anyway, but I just wanted to ask. I had to ask you, Carl, about the Rock Shandy, the club.
Oh yeah, good man.
So you explain to Margaret first what a Rock Shandy is, and then what club is, because she probably doesn't have a clue.
Yeah, actually, I was very curious about that.
Yeah, so Club Orange is the third biggest soft drink in Ireland. So you've Coca-Cola, 7-Up, and then instead of Fanta, it's Club Orange. It's an Irish product, and they also have a lemon drink, and there was a tradition where you would get half lemon and half orange, and just pour a bottle of each into a glass, and that was called a Rock Shandy. And then they started making it themselves, so they did the blending for you. I suppose it was a really popular soft drink, so like that's their brand, I guess, Club Rock Shandy. And they're actually quite close to where the brewery is, and they approached us and says, "Hey, would you guys like to do something together?" And we're kind of blown away by this kind of approach, and we sat down, and myself and the brewers was like, okay, what can we do? Are we going to do something sour to try and get the acidity from that kind of soft drink, or we're going to do like a New England Pale Ale? We came up with a few different ideas, and we did a pilot kit on the 300 litre kit, and put it on tap in the tap room, and got the guys from Club down to taste it, and they loved it. Like they're really, really happy, and so we were able to just get their input as well on the fruit and stuff. And I suppose our whole point was to try and make a pale ale that tastes like a Rock Shandy.
Right.
And we're really, really happy with it. So we did one batch, and we sold out within a few days. And did a second batch there recently, and the same thing happened.
And it actually has the Club Rock Shandy in it, is it? Sorry.
No, it doesn't have. There's no Rock Shandy in it, so the recipe is ours. But I suppose we got their input on what fruits to use. We use the same supplier for our fruit as we normally do. So there's lemon and orange zest, which goes into the whirlpool, and then there's lemon and orange puree that goes into the fermentation, and there's some orange extract to finish as well. So it's got a fair bit of tartness in it from the lemon, and then there's like a sweetness from the orange, which kind of balances back up again.
Open one here and Jacob reminds me of what I remember Rock Shandy to be. Like.
Yeah, well, it's a grown-up Rock Shandy, you know. Be careful.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Rock Shandies to me were always like when you were the driver.
Yeah.
Rock Shandy. So this would kind of confuse you a bit.
And it seemed like you had maybe a pretty low IBU on that, because I already drank that one, and it was just it was really nice and juicy, like.
Yeah, 4.5%. Yeah, because we didn't want to go mad with alcohol either, like, so it's like a grown-up soft drink.
Well, it's not that soft drink compared to some of the beers that are coming out now, which are basically just all fruit juice. Like, you know, they're that you wouldn't think you're drinking beer at all. This one you can just get a bit of a hint of the beer just to.
Yeah, I thought it's important because, like, you know, I was just making alcoholic juice. You know, it's still a beer at the end of the day. The fruit is just kind of in there to kind of bring something different.
And one of the things I want to ask you about was on both your labels and the same on Octo. You're like the taproom element is very strong. I mean, on your cans, it's, you know, come visit. Octo had their, you know, they brew this in a good mood and stop by to visit us for friends. And yours is a little bit more discreet, Margaret, but it's still down there, you know, about where you are and to come and visit the brewery. Yeah. So do you think that drives people in? Is it important for you to, when you're out there, to let people know that there is a brewery, that there is a place to come and visit, even if, say, they're on the opposite end of the country or maybe opposite end of the city, then mightn't come? Is it important? Because I haven't seen it really on any other packaging, I don't think.
Yeah, for us it's important because I think it gives the potential for a much fuller experience. I mean, because it's just, you know, it's still in Lisbon, so it's not the situation where they have to travel that far actually. But just to see, that product that I consumed, like, it's made right here, you know, by these people in this place, and you know, people really like that. Like, people love to visit brewery tap rooms because, you know, they like to be so close to the production, and, you know, it's very fresh. You know, you always can get, you know, something available there in a tap room which you might not be able to get where the beer is sold elsewhere. And it's really just to make it more like real and personal with people, you know, like it's as I understand, in the UK, you know, they have the campaign for real ale, and I kind of really like the name of real ale, like real beer. Like, it is real. It's not virtual, you know. It's not just an image. It's not just a product, like in a package. You know, it's a physical thing that you interact with. You drink and you socialize with people, and so if you can get yourself to the place where it's made, then you also get a better sense of the story behind it and what's inside it. I think it makes it more real for people, and then it builds a much stronger relationship, you know. So we're a small brewery. We you know, by definition, can't have a huge following because we just don't make that much beer. But you know, the people who know us, they feel like, oh, we really know AmO, you know. And okay, not everybody likes it, but then the ones who do like it, you know, they really like it, and then, you know, they want to come back, they want to follow what we're doing. Even if they're traveling, they might come back and visit us again if they come to Lisbon. And that's really nice, like having that relationship, you know. Otherwise, if you don't have that kind of aspect of things, then, you know, you just have a business, and okay, then it's just business. But, you know, I do this for fun, right? I mean, it's also my business, it's also my life, but I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't do it if I didn't have fun with it. Yeah,
like I totally hear what you're saying. Like, it's putting a face to who's behind it, like, and that helps to grow the story and sell the story as well. Like, it is real people that that have started these businesses for passion that they have for the product and for the beers, and I totally relate to what you're saying, Margaret.
And does that make it, like, do you have in your own head then a limit of how big you want to be before it stops being fun, or
it's
a big business that then just becomes your Guinness or somebody like that.
Yeah, it's a funny one because it's still still hard work, and you still have days that are tough or whatever. Like, oh, why am I doing this? But at the end of it, for us anyway, it's when I see people in the tap room and they're drinking the beer, and people might come up to you and they might recognize you and say, "Hey, look, I love your happy days," or "I love this beer," and that's what makes it, but how big is too big? I think when it becomes, when you start losing control of everything, that's when you have to kind of take a step back and go, right, let's just pause here and see how it goes for a while, and not just plateau and just kind of keep it steady, rather than trying to drive the business forward all the time,
And how do you do? I mean, one of the big things that you emphasize as well on your tap room, I suppose, is that it's a pizza place. You have very good pizzas, and that seems to be almost as big a focus as the beer.
It is, because it's a restaurant tap room. I suppose there's two reasons behind that. First of all, it was a hell of a lot easier to get a restaurant license than a pub license in Ireland. That was, I suppose, to try and get around the loophole, I suppose. But as well, we were passionate about having good food and good pizzas, and the chef that works in our place has worked in a few different pizza restaurants around Dublin, and we knew his pizza was really, really good. We tried to have a lot of Irish ingredients as well: Irish cheeses, Irish chorizo, Irish buffalo mozzarella, and I have to say his pizzas are great, and it's a great combo, pizza and beer.
Yeah, no, I know it's just looking at the social media, and that you emphasize the pizza, the beer, and music. They were the three things that really and I suppose that sums up a night out,
Yeah, exactly, yeah, and there's equal focus on both the pizza and the beer. When it comes to trying to get the name out there and stuff. Yeah,
because you were even linking that hazy one that Margaret was drinking there with. I saw you had it should be drunk with Radiohead, and that was that.
Yeah. Well, Joe's our guy. He's big into music, and we have a pretty good sound system in the place. We're putting decent speakers because, as you said, it's a night out, pizza, beer, and some good music.
And do people travel to you then, or is it locals?
Very, very much. A lot of locals around Dublin 8 and Dublin 12, but definitely get people coming from the other side of the city as well. Right. We do tours in the brewery, usually on a Friday evening and a Saturday afternoon, and you get people as well. Not at the moment, it's only Irish people. But we were, I suppose, just kind of starting the tours when the pandemic hit. Right. That's a new part of it, I guess.
And Margaret, yours. Well, I noticed what you have. Your food. You have pretzels. But it sounded interesting because, I don't mean to be sound dismissive, but you had. I think it was someone you knew who was just bringing in pretzels, and you kind of got him on board or something, and that's the. It sounded very family sort of.
It is. So before I launched AmO as a business, when I was still homebrewing here in Lisbon, we were doing these social get-togethers on the weekend. I was bringing my homebrew, and my friend Sean had a little oven, and so he was making bread and making pretzels. So it was sort of bread and beer hangouts. And then after AmO started, then he moved into the space and started to make the pretzels there, because it's just a good and really easy accompaniment for beer. And unlike Rascals, that we don't have a restaurant, we don't have a lot of space for food production, so it's basically just whatever we can do in the oven. And we did recently start to do mini pizzas just as a little snack, but after reading all the info on your cans, I really feel like, I want to go there and have a pizza. Those sound like really good pizzas. So people definitely don't come to AmO for the food, but they, pretzels have become also a thing by which we're recognized.
That's
it's
cool.
Also something new in Portugal, the pretzel.
Oh, really? Yeah. And pretzels, it is a good complement to beer because, a bit of soakage and a bit of salt, and
no, it sounds like, the taprooms are both, very community, very much, but it sounds like it's almost, you have your restaurant, it's a big, lively, hopping place, And yours, Margaret, sounds almost like a house party. You know, you're coming into someone's house and you're just, you know, it's small, they're there, you know everybody there.
Yeah, and in fact, that's how it feels. It feels like it's my house, and I'm happy to invite everyone there. And
Is it the same people come back all the time? Like, can strangers get in there if they're not?
oh, for sure, for sure. If they're, you know, if they're brave enough to walk out, then you know, walk up, then we're, you know, also the regular guests are like, oh, hello, who are you? You know, where are you from? What's your name? You know, have a seat here. Well, that's something that I hope we can bring back a bit more after the pandemic. Of course, now people are a little bit hesitant about too much social mixing, but that's what it was all about. You know, we didn't used to have any individual tables, just sort of like longer beer benches. You know, so everybody's kind of forced to sit together and get to know each other. So I kind of like to think that everybody who comes to the tap room is a regular, but some of them are just there for the first time, and they might not be back again for quite a while. But
yeah, it's a nice thing about being in any tap room, and I like the style of the bench tables, and you're sitting down to across from someone that you've never seen before, and you can kind of, there's an immediate icebreaker, and that's the beer, you know, and you're having a conversation with other people who are into or passionate about. But I guess it's probably, at the moment with all this pandemic stuff, you know, social distancing and sitting near strangers have things opened up a bit there in Lisbon, or is it?
Yeah, things open up quite a bit here this fall. We're down to like the lowest level of alert since it began. So any kind of food establishment can basically operate like normal, and even now larger bars and clubs can be opened with some restrictions.
Yeah.
For the first time this month, you know, since the beginning.
I think
so.
It's very same here. Yeah.
We're just. Yeah, on the beers, like we were mentioning that the beers, I know Cathal didn't manage to get them. They didn't arrive for.
Unfortunately.
It's somewhere in someone else's house. But
it'll be a nice surprise now in a few weeks if they turn up.
But I tried like two of them last night. I mentioned I tried the Scottish one, which I thought was really, really nice. It was, you know, it had just. I'm not too fond of very peaty beers, and this was just, for me, was very nice. It was, the sweetness came through more than the thing. I actually poured it a bit too cold first, and it was took a bit of time to heat up, so it was a little bit smoky. But so I didn't try this one. So I tried that. I thought it was nice. It wasn't what I was expecting. I thought Portugal, you know, wine country, might be more towards lagers, like you said, you know, kind of thing. But I suppose wine has its, you know, has real depth in it too, so it shouldn't have surprised me really. But is there? I want to try one. Which one of these two do you recommend? The Rapazzina or the Borbolitas? Maybe you want to just tell us what they are.
Well, the Borbolitas, it's our American Pale Ale, and this was our most popular and I'd say also most drinkable beer. It's got a lot of Citra, well, not a lot. It's got some Citra and Cascade in it, so it's not too hoppy. Like I said, I'm a bit antsy about making the beers too bitter, you know, for people who are new on the drinking scene. So I would say maybe try the Borbolitas, since it's one that a lot of people already know, so you should get to know it.
Right.
The Rapazzina, it's also a pale ale, but the hop content is minimal. It's got the Arabica coffee in it, so it's quite different. The Rapazzina, my idea was, I don't want to make a black beer with coffee, because that's what everybody does. I wanted to make a pale ale with a light roast coffee, and that came out really well. So that one's more popular in cafes or places that also sell artisanal coffee, but then they also want to have a beer there, you know, because people don't only drink coffee there, that, you know, they might want a beer, and so then they like to have something like that, you know, for that specialized clientele.
You've done a few coffee beers. How do you add your coffee?
In this one, we put it in a mash. So the grounds, like fresh ground beans, straight in a mash.
Very good,
I really like it like that. I tried to make some infusions and cold brew and add that, like blend it in later.
Yeah, I tried that as well.
But it was kind of unpredictable, the result.
Yeah, and I think it can be risky as well if you're adding, water and coffee that's been sitting for overnight or whatever. We've thrown beans straight into the fermenter in conditioning for like 24 or 48 hours and try to rouse it or something like that if you can. I found it works. It's a very different flavor. It's you get less roast and more the kind of fruitiness from the coffee. But it's a cool thing to brew with coffee. And give you a bit of a pick me up as well.
You find that I think someone mentioned this to me, that sometimes what you think of as a good drinking coffee makes a terrible adjunct to a beer, and you want the rougher, maybe not so nice coffees in there.
For beer?
Yeah, that whatever way it interacts and that whether they're more acidic or I don't know what it was, but it was just a comment made to me one time. I was wondering if either of you had kind of come across that, or would you go for high quality coffee all the time?
Well, we use coffee from a local Dublin 8 roastery called Imbibe. First of all, because I like their coffee. They do their house espresso blends, and they do loads of, a bit like craft beer, loads of kind of single origin coffees that are really fruity and interesting. But I think using those, I suppose, specialty coffees might be a little bit wasted in beer because, where do you get the flavors through or not? But we've used their espresso blend, and it's really it's quite light, but it's still far more. It's not as complex as those kind of unusual coffees that they use.
Yeah, we use in the raposinha, like I said, we put the coffee grinds in the mash, and we use like quite high quality coffee, and I do find that the flavor comes through also because the base beer itself is lighter, right, and gives more space for the beans.
Yes.
And then it's like if I would be, going for a darker, stronger beer like an imperial stout with coffee, okay, then I would just go for a strong dark roast, nothing so special. But if the beer is quite light and you want the coffee to shine through, but I was going to also point out, like, for example, we do a chocolate porter usually around Christmas, and that's with cacao powder in it, and that goes in at the end of the boil.
Okay.
And I noticed a huge difference, even though the cacao powder is a small percentage of the recipe. The quality of the cacao made a huge difference in the resulting beer in the end. So that sort of gave me the indication, like, I think the quality of the ingredients does make a difference. I can find the difference, and being having a smaller production, we don't have to be maybe as worried about the costs of ingredients that like a large microbrewery would have to be a bit more worried about.
With the cacao, is it powdered cacao nibs that you're using?
Yeah, no, like powdered cacao, like for baking, just pure powdered cacao.
Okay, yeah. Interesting.
Have you done any chocolate ones, Carl?
We did a similar kind of process. We got the beans and got them crushed and put them into the conditioning tank at the end, when the beer was nearly finished, and roused it for a couple of days, and found that the stronger alcohol beer, especially, that it can extract the flavor from the crushed beans. It's you can get a real. What I did find with the chocolate, that you can definitely get there's different grades, and again we use a local chocolate company called the Proper Chocolate Company, and they get their single origin bean cacao nibs and that, and they specifically roast them for us and get them crushed. So yeah.
Does that work out then? Like if you try and do the same one every time, but you use, like, have you ever just do that? It's the same recipe but just a different blend of coffee or of chocolate or whatever, and just see what happens, or do you try and keep it the same every time because you know it's what works? Or
with the chocolate, we kind of took their recommendation on which chocolate to use, because we're trying to, I suppose, get that kind of milk chocolate flavor into a stout that we did, and obviously you wouldn't use like a standard chocolate bar, because some of their chocolates are quite rich and complex as well, like, and again some kind of fruitiness. So we just took their advice on whatever nibs they gave us, and as well, like, it's a one-off beer that we brew maybe once a year. So if there's a slight difference between this year and last year, I think you might not even notice.
Yeah, and in the case of the Raposinha, since it is one of the regular lineup, although a bit more of a specialty beer, like we try and brew it consistently. So even though we don't always get the same, because we also buy from a local roastery, Olisipo Coffee, and so they might not always have the exact same beans, the exact same origin, but we try and always pick something quite similar to keep the beer consistent.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the clock here because I know Margaret has to go pretty much on time, so I'm kind of watching it here. So yeah, just on that, maybe we'll start trying to wrap up. So because of that, sorry, I had a question there. Yeah, so like, just bring it back around to that, having the tap room and having the interaction with your customers that way. Do you find they're more forgiving if there is, like, you're doing batch beers and they're looking for batch beers and they're more forgiving of, this batch may not be quite the same as the other one, or are they more forgiving than, say, someone who's buying cans or something in off the shelf, because they know you, or because they know that this is your style, that you're going to try something new and that it's not going to be exactly the same? Or do you think that it requires that people are coming in that you have to be more consistent?
I would think, especially for the core beers, like, consistency is key, because there's so many regulars that will always drink Happy Days or whatever. Even if you do a pilot brew on one of the other taps, and say it could be a very similar base recipe to Happy Days, but we've used different hops. You can suggest to someone, I know you like Happy Days, why not try this beer instead? But for me, consistency is crucial when it comes to those core beers. But then you can get creative with the specialty beers, which you brew once a month or whatever. And if you start off with an idea and it turns out slightly different to what you expected, but it's still a really, really good beer, then I think that's fine.
Yeah. How about you, Margaret? Do you find your kind of core customers are looking for the consistency, or?
I would say that our core customers, they have their favorites, the core beers, and that's what we also try and keep consistent. But probably like Rascals, right, our beers are also unfiltered and unpasteurized, so they do mature over time, they change over time. And being in the tap room is also a good opportunity to educate customers about the quality of like a living beer, that it's not going to be like the stuff you find in the big supermarket, right? Like that it might have some small differences. So we definitely try to be consistent on the main beers, but the tap room is also a really good place to try out, like, do a different dry hop straight in the keg, just to try something out, just do tiny little experiments like that, and you just put it up as just for one night, and whoever is there is lucky enough to try it, and I get to see, what do people think about that? Should we try that? Should we put different hop, throw some fruit in there, whatever, it's fun.
Yeah, that is fun. It sounds really good. And it for one night only is always a good thing. People will go for it.
The beer that didn't work, you just make for one night only.
Also this.
I know I could keep talking, but I know, Margaret, you have to go. You were saying you have to go pretty much on time, because just in case you don't know, Cathal, Margaret's arranging a murder mystery in her place tonight for Halloween. So yes, to
AmO?
Come on.
Yeah, at AmO. Actually,
Brilliant.
People might be curious, sorry, the listeners, because it's a question I get a lot. What does AmO mean? So it stands for I love in Portuguese. So AmO Brewery, I love brewery, and it's also the initials of my name. So Margaret, it's my middle name.
Okay.
But yeah, in the tap room tonight, we'll have a little Halloween celebration with a murder mystery theme party. And so I have to go and set up.
Very good. Best of luck with that.
Yeah. So look, like I said, I could keep talking, but we have to respect any dead people who are going to be around tonight. So listen, I hope I found it enjoyable. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope anybody watching this will kind of, maybe make an effort if you're in Dublin or if you're in Lisbon to go and check out the two places, because they sound like they're definitely well worth. They're very welcoming, and they have great beer and great food, and it sounds like it'd be a pretty good night out. So what I'll do is I'll just let you know we're taking a break next week, and then we'll be back on November the 13th. We have Hand from Norway, Lobek from Czechoslovakia, and Veronica from Croatia. And then the following week, we actually have something I'm kind of excited about. It's we're going to be talking about farmhouse traditions and what they can do for modern brewing, with a special look at kind of raw ales. And we have Otterbank from Ireland, Butcher's Tears from Netherlands, and Eichen Tid from Norway joining for that. But we also have, I don't know if you know him, Lars Marius Garshall, who's he wrote the book on farmhouse brewing, literally, and he's the guy who kind of brought Vike to the world's attention. So he's the expert on it. So he'll be joining in as well, and I think that should be quite an interesting one. So with that, I'll just play out a video for November 13th. Thank you both.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks for hosting, Brian. It was great to chat.
Yeah, pity Taras didn't make it. He said he was in a car, so probably he was on his way back from a meeting, but must have been traffic or something, so hopefully he's okay. And I'll just play out a thing for next week, and I'll let you go. And thanks a million.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao. Nice to meet you guys.
You too. This here.